Hi, welcome back to Jane's Stories of Life. You know, I end each of my Facebook videos with the phrase, cherish your memories and pass them on. And today I'm sharing with you a number of memories of my life and my experiences in the state of Delaware. I knew nothing about Delaware until the night of the blind date when I met Morgan. I had never met anyone from Delaware. I had never heard of Delaware State College, which was the college that Morgan graduated from. I knew absolutely nothing about Delaware. Yet, as it turns out, 29 years of living in Delaware provided many, many memories for me. I lived there longer than anywhere else, 21 years in upstate New York, my first 25 years in Cleveland, Ohio, so Delaware won the prize for the years that I lived there. When I met Morgan on that blind date, it was fascinating because I also had never met anyone who majored in agriculture education. I mean, there were a lot of firsts that night, and it was truly love at first sight. But those are other stories that you've heard about in some of my other videos, I know. The first time that I visited Dover was several weeks after we got married, and we were in Philadelphia for this summer from Cleveland. Both of us had been teaching in Cleveland, and Morgan had a summer job in Philadelphia, so we were there, which is just a little over an hour from Dover. So that was my first trip, and it was Delaware is the second smallest state in the country, next to Rhode Island. Having been an urban child in Ohio and Cleveland and Detroit, it was really different. I'll never forget the night that we pulled into Dover. We pulled into a gas station or a convenience store or something, and next to the car, Morgan got out to go into whatever it was, and I happened to glance over, and parked next to us was the state police car with a big German Shepherd police dog in it. I kind of did a double take at that. I had not seen police dogs before, and that kind of shook me up a bit. Dover was small. It had a very small mall compared to other things. It's a small town. And it was a whole new experience for me. For years when we lived in upstate New York, Morgan always said he would hope someday to move back to Delaware. And I used to say to him, if you move to Delaware, you are moving by yourself, because I am not moving to that little, and I'm sorry, Delaware, like I said, I'm not moving to that little hick state. It turns out that we did move back to Delaware after 21 years in upstate New York, and believe me, I ate those words. The 29 years we were there were filled with many memories, wonderful people, many things that I just cherished memories. So lately I've been just so excited with what's been happening with the Delaware State University. Morgan went to Delaware State College, graduated in 1961. At that time, there were 386 students in total. Now, there are over 7,000 students at Delaware State University, and it has become one of the best HBCUs. They have an aviation program. They have many grants and honors, and the campus has grown. The entire Delaware State University system has changed so much through the years. So I'm very proud of knowing that, and having lived there, being involved with, many things on campus, and knowing many people who worked on campus. Cindy received her MBA there, and she worked there for over 10 years. We had season tickets to the football games. Morgan was in the Delaware State College Athletic Hall of Fame. We went to the football games. We went to various activities. And so I just have so many memories about that. The state of Delaware, many of you have had limited experience. Maybe you've driven down 95 going from New York, New Jersey to the other parts of the East Coast, and you hit the corner of Delaware. You say, oh, I've been to Delaware. Yeah, Delaware is small. It's 99 miles long, 35 miles wide. So you can go from one end of the state to the other. But it's a good location. You know, it's near Philadelphia, within 2 hours of D.C., within that's the same amount of time to Baltimore. We were 35, 40 miles from Rehoboth Beach and some of the beach areas there on the Atlantic Ocean. So, it really was a good location and just so many wonderful people, so many wonderful friends and people that I met through the years, and some good food, many experiences. Some of you have become more familiar with Delaware because, of course, President Joe Biden was from Delaware. So Delaware came into a little more of the press, or a little more about the state. Delaware was the first state to ratify the Constitution. So that's one of their slogans, their first state. One of the other slogans is Delaware, small wonder, because of the size. And, experiences, where else do you stop at a traffic light next to a redesigned school bus that houses crates and crates of live chickens? The poultry industry is alive and well in southern Delaware, as it's affectionately known as lower Delaware. Agriculture is big. Soybeans and other kinds of things are grown there, and it's just a very interesting. It was an interesting experience. Pretty sizable Amish and Mennonite community, so you had, your horses and buggies, and you had hitching posts when you went to Acme or, other supermarkets to shop. They had there was a section on the side of the building, usually next to the parking lot, for hitching posts, so Amish people could tie their horses and buggies up there. So it was really many things that were different, certainly different than Cleveland and Detroit. It's been a couple of years since I've been there. Great Delta chapter, and the state of Delaware had, at the time, most of the time that I was there, 5 chapters within the state. 2 undergraduate chapters, one at Delaware State, one at University of Delaware. And the state has 3 counties, and so each county had a Delta chapter. But because the state was so small, we did many things statewide, and so you got to know Deltas from all over this state. I taught there in several schools. That was some different experiences as well from my urban school experiences. The no commercial airport in Delaware during the times that we were there. So if you wanted to travel, if you wanted to fly, you had to either go to Philadelphia or Baltimore. We always flew in and out of Baltimore. We liked that airport better. We liked the traveling to Baltimore better than we did to Philadelphia. But it was an interesting time. And I miss my friends. I miss my stores. I miss my church. I miss so many things that were there. But I'm where I need to be. We moved to Florida to be closer to John, and that was important with Morgan's health situation. I've been back just once since we moved here, and I at this point I don't choose to fly. I don't know when I'll get back. I could take the auto train to DC and make it from DC to Virginia to Delaware, but we'll see. So that's about it for now. I just have had Delaware on my mind. I wanted to share some of those things with you. And if you're on the East Coast and you haven't been to Delaware, get off of 95, drive 50 miles south and visit Dover and just enjoy a new experience. Okay, cherish your memories and pass them on. Well, welcome back to Jane's Stories of Life, Delaware Living, Part 2. There's always something I forget. I look at what I have recorded, and then I say, oh yeah, I meant to add. So there are a couple things that I wanted to add to the video that I just did. One of them certainly has to do with family, because with Morgan being from Dover, there's still family in Dover, in New Jersey, and that was another important thing through the years before we moved back. We were back and forth in the summers. We were back and forth other times to be with family. So let me not leave out our loving family that I miss. Some of the family members are no longer living. Some of the family members have grown up and moved to other places, or just moved in general. And I don't want to leave them out at all. That was an important, many cherished memories with family activities and things that we did through the years. The other point that I want to make for me, which was certainly a learning kind of experience, Delaware was a segregated state. And I grew up not without segregation, but I did not grow up in a segregated community. And so learning about how segregation operated, hearing about, seeing in the theater where Black people had to go to sit. They couldn't sit in the main part, of course. The schools there were 3 high schools, 1 in each county. Hearing Morgan and his peers and his relatives and the older people talk about the long bus rides that some of them may have had to get to school, because the Black schools were not as easily accessible. I'll never forget the first time that Morgan and I went to Rehoboth Beach. I'll never forget, just it's a memory that sticks very clearly in my mind. We were walking along the boardwalk, and I said, let's go down and walk in the sand and put our feet in the water, or something like that. Morgan froze. I mean, he literally just stopped, and he said, I can't. And then he kind of caught himself, and he said, I can't today. And I said, why not? And he said, I'm sorry. He said, but we were not allowed to go onto the beach. There was a section at the beach and some of the other places where Black people could go, but we were not allowed. He said, I just can't do that today. And so there were many things that I learned, as a 40, however old I was, about how segregated society not only operated, but how it affected people who, children and others in terms of in their growing up and their experiences. And, it was an eye-opening kind of thing for me. And that's something, as I said, that many people don't, if they knew about Delaware, they didn't particularly think about Delaware as being a segregated southern state. Yet it was also one of the last ones to abolish slavery, even after slavery. I don't have those statistics in my head, and I'm sorry, but reading some of the history of integration, the schools were not integrated. Morgan grew up in totally segregated. Delaware, there were a lot of complex issues, And as I said, it was really quite a learning experience for me during those years. And, you know, it's an interesting, as I say, if you can, get to know it. Get to know it. Stop and see it. So I may add other things, not to this video, maybe at another time. But anyway, cherish your memories and pass them on.